Hello and welcome to Album IQ, your ultimate resource for album reviews. My name's John and today we are talking about Justin Bieber's Swag 2. Overall, Swag 2 does kind of seem like a continuation of Swag 1 in some ways for good and in some ways for bad. It has a similar vibe. It kept up with that like retro throwback feel in a lot of ways, but somehow and in some way, Swag 2 seems a little less intentional than Swag 1. Let's be honest, and I know I said it before, and a lot of people are saying it, Swag 1 had a lot of extra. Like, there was a lot of fat that could have been cut from that album. It could have really been trimmed down and edited a lot more to be kind of just a more impactful and more cohesive album altogether. I feel that same issue plagues Swag 2. It's still a very long album, again, over 20 tracks, a lot to listen to. And while sonically it does seem to carry across thematically, even from Swag 1, but for some reason on Apple Music, it's like in reverse. It's like the new one they dropped is the top disc, and then the first one is the bottom disc. I guess I'm not sure how that works. But yeah, so thematically and sonically, yeah, it is a carryover from Swag 1, although again, like I said, it seems somehow less intentional and kind of less cohesive in a way. How would I describe Swag 2 overall, especially since having some time and some space from Swag 1 and never knowing that Swag 2 was always intended to be attached to it? I would describe Swag 2 as sort of organic sounds and textures that bump up to or kind of conflict with the modern day production sound and the modern day production expectations that are just current in today's pop music and just music in general. It's very hard to kind of marry the two, and I feel like Swag 2 did not accomplish that. Musically and instrumentally, there's a lot of very nicely textured, warm, and I don't want to say gritty, but just very natural and like organic. I feel like I'm hearing real drums. I feel like I'm hearing real guitars. I feel like I'm hearing real instruments. But the way it bumps up against modern day production expectations is with the vocal processing. And now look, on a Justin Bieber album, vocal processing and the vocals itself they're more than half of what everybody's listening to. They're the vast majority. Now, I guess you could say that with most pop music, but I would say some bands it's an equal split, and maybe some bands you're more likely to have the music be the focus as opposed to the vocals. But in this case, for sure, the vocals are the main focus, and just the way they're processed seems to create a sort of subconscious dissonance. It doesn't vibe with the rest of the music. It doesn't even vibe with the writing sometimes or the performances. And we'll get into that in a little bit, and I'll be a little bit more specific with what I mean. So let's talk about some of the things I liked. Right off the cut, I'm not going to go into a lot of songs because there's a lot of songs to go into. But right off the cut, you'll hear songs like Speed Demon, which at first it seems like it makes sense, but then I don't really know what he's talking about after a while. But it's fun to listen to. It's a nice song. You have Love Song that's got a cool groove to it. The drums are nice. Again, they don't feel plastic. They don't feel like something I can just, if I have the same sample pack, that I can get the same sound. They feel like maybe they were recorded in a studio, or if they're not, they were recorded in a studio somewhere and maybe pulled as a loop. But I really like the groove. I feel like it wasn't super expected. It's definitely not something you've never heard before, but it was a nice change, and it was an enjoyable track. Again, another track, I Think You're Special, it's a good track. The reason I like I Think You're Special is because it's a very interesting example. If you're ever looking for how to make a kick drum and a bass, even a low subby bass, sound wide. I know a lot of days, if you watch modern production YouTube videos or any kind of production training, a lot of people talk about sometimes they mono from 60 hertz down, or you want to keep the lows kind of center so that there's no phasing and it doesn't sound weird when you're listening to it in a room. I got to tell you, this sounds wide, almost with the impression that like inside of a nice pair of headphones, almost sounds like had like the way they double track guitars in hard pan. Not quite that extreme, but the kick has a very wide sound. I don't know if it's reverb. I don't know what they did, but y'all have a listen. Tell me what you think. Same thing with the bass. It sounds very wide, but it's very cohesive. I don't hear any phasing issues, and it just still has the impact. But inside a pair of headphones, a nice pair of headphones, it's just very nice. It's very like it really brings you into an environment. You really feel like you're in a space when you're listening to this track, and it's a very cool example example, and something that you might want to use as a reference track when you're trying to have a wide and spacious kick and bass sound, but still have it feel like it has the weight, and it not be concerned about phase issues or feeling like you're missing that low end and subby center. That's a really good track for it to listen to. Again, I'm not going to go through every track, but so for example, Mother and You, I don't know, maybe 4, 5, 6 tracks into 20 track album. So the first thing that messed with me in this track is there's hard pan guitars. Now that's a cool idea and that's effective in a lot of ways, but you had this hard panned rhythmic kind of guitar that's setting a pace and a tone in your right ear, and then there's this other hard pan guitar that's got some harmonics, not pinch harmonics, but just maybe normal fretboard harmonics, but the timing of it, it's weird. They're on weird ups or weird, I don't know, it's just the timing doesn't flow. And so something I like to hear, especially when I'm mixing or when I'm listening to music, I don't mind the hard panning, I don't mind the different rhythmic elements in two different ears. Actually, I find that very compelling and enjoyable to listen to, but this was just too weird because you had this regular rhythm and then this weird kind of erratic jumpy rhythm in the other side, and it kind of pulled me out of a macro view and listening as just a music enjoyer and a music listener. And then because of the kind of music listener I am, like a lot of us here, probably everybody who works on these videos and anybody who's probably ever going to be interested in this channel whatsoever, we're not just average music listeners. We're engineers, we're musicians, we're producers. And so it pulled me out, and I think it pulled me more into my music analytical mind. So I started paying very close attention. And this is where I first noticed that there seems to be more pitch corrector on Justin's voice than I originally thought. I haven't gone back to listen to Swag 1 to see if that's actually was still a problem in Swag 1, because I know I was giving him mad props for his vocal talent in Swag 1. But listening in Swag 2, I'm noticing pitch corrector. And sometimes it's so strong it feels intentional. Now in this track, I don't think it was so strong it feels intentional, but if you have good enough headphones and you are tuned enough to pitch correction, based on my age, from a very young age, I was listening to oldies. I had no choice. My pops made me listen to oldies all the time. And then up through kind of, the 90s and alt is where I got really deep into my own bands. And then, obviously everyone knows 1998 was when Cher first kind of came on with the pitch corrector and made it an effect. But since then, I've had an ability to I can really tell, even when super talented singers are using pitch corrector, I can tell. Justin Bieber is a very talented singer. And in this album, there's pitch corrector all throughout it. And Mother and You is where I first noticed it. And that's what I was talking about earlier, where I feel like there's some kind of dissonance there. Again, I could be wrong. Performances, organic instruments, recording, microphones in front of speakers, microphones in front of instruments, and these things that, man, this got texture and vibe that you can't, at least I don't think, and if you can, wow, there's geniuses back there. And they're geniuses anyways, the album sounds great. But I don't think you can fake a lot of that funk. And then you layer this vocalist who is extremely talented, but then there's just pitch corrector. And if it's enough, the average person won't notice, probably. I noticed. The rest of you who work with pitch correction, the rest of you who work in music will notice. You'll hear it. And I just feel like it creates this weird juxtaposition where man, I don't know. It doesn't work for me. It wasn't working for me. And because that raised that flag in my head at the Mother and You or Mother and You, I just started noticing it from that point on throughout the album. And some songs, it's so thick that it almost feels like they're intentionally going for the effect. Maybe they were. But sometimes, and a lot of times, I feel like they're trying to hide it. They think they're being subtle, but I can hear it. And I'm sure some of you will be able to as well. Speaking of organic textures and stuff, Witcha is another really good track I feel like y'all should check out. It's a very good example of, man, it feels like you got your typical sine wave sub going on, but there's some kind of texture added to it that just makes it unique and individual. And that's something that we all might be looking to capture. It's one thing to just put a sine wave on, get your subs, get your 808s, and throw it on there and sound like everybody else who uses sine wave and stuff. This sub and this track Witcha, it captures the vibe you want a low sub to capture in headphones and in speakers. But there's something they do to it. Y'all have a listen. Tell me what you think. Maybe we can come up with ideas on how they did it. But let me know what you think. But there's something that they did to that again, that made it sound textured and organic in a way that I just found very interesting and very pleasing. Nice, unique, and just something that's a kind of a standout track to me because of that sub and that track. I gotta say, if you guys want to hear a song with the hardest S's I've ever heard in my life, listen to Poppin' My Shit. This guy, I don't even want to do it the way that he sings it, because I'm going to blow my mic out, or I'm going to blow y'all's ears out. This is a very, very hard S, because he's like, popping my shit, popping my shit. I'm not holding it out because I'm afraid to curse. Shit is a fine word for me. I just don't want to blow the mic out. But listen to that track, and like, for being such a hard S, man, it is managed well. It is very well managed. I don't believe that it's purely a de-esser. Unless they've got some kind of de-esser algorithm I don't have yet, or a lot of us don't have. Check that track out, because, man, they did an awesome job of, like, the consonant is there. You know exactly what it's trying to say. It's not having that lispy effect where, like, if you got too strong of a de-esser on it. It is well managed, and it's easily listenable to on kind of, even on your more harsher headphones and stuff like that. You could definitely, or more harsh headphones. I don't think more harsher is a thing, but you get what I'm saying. Other standouts to me, I would say Petting Zoo. I really liked that track. It's not like stylistically, it's not like, I don't know, something you've never heard before, but it just seemed real. It seemed like the way he was singing it, the words that he was singing. I just really like that song. It's another standout track. For those of us who are just listening to this to think about what other songs you might want to listen to, listen to Petting Zoo. It was a good track. I liked it. I would say the most emotionally charged and kind of powerful track on as far as like connectivity on a realistic level with the artist, Everything Hallelujah. I liked the track. I did. I didn't think I would. And even some of the stuff, like lyrically, I feel like at first was kind of making me feel like I wasn't going to like the track, because sometimes lyrics that I feel like are like too nonsensical when the track is supposed to, it's like, oh, I'm going to present you this track that's a serious track, but then I'm going to give you nonsense lyrics. And that doesn't work for me. But this track it did work for me. And nothing took me out of the vibe at the time. And so there's something going on with that track that to me makes it worth a listen. And again, that's just simply from music fan standpoint. That has nothing to do with production or anything like that. Just a good track to listen to. Overall, like if you're like into cinematic 80s kind of synth production, there's a lot of tracks. It's not overt. Like, I wouldn't tell you like, oh, listen to this album if you want to get some good examples of cinematic 80s synth pads. No, but if you've got the right ear and you've got the right head and you're listening to it, there are some spots throughout this album where there's just nice synth work. Sometimes more subtle than others, but it's got some nice production to it and nice mixing. Obviously, they're like top of the top here, right? People working on this album. Overall, I would have liked to see less tracks. And I know I'm probably not the first one to have this take, but the truth is what we could have and maybe should have done. And again, I don't know. Maybe this is like contractual obligations. Maybe Justin Bieber was trying to fulfill contract obligations. Maybe he had to produce or release so many songs, or maybe he had to produce or release so many albums. I feel like Swag 1 and Swag 2 could have been consolidated into one strong album, much stronger, much more cohesive album. Get rid of a lot of the fluff from album 1, get rid of a lot of the fluff from album 2, maybe tie in some more thematic motifs as far as synth sounds or drum sounds, or just make it a little bit more cohesive. You have one really strong album, Swag, cool. After that, then you have what are they, like those artist versions or the special edition version. They do a special edition where you have all these extra tracks, all these kind of B-sides that didn't really need to be in there, because by the time you're done listening to Swag 1 and Swag 2 and you're 40 songs deep, it starts to feel like you're just kind of reading someone's diary. It's just like, not all of these are, in my opinion, album cut songs. So, you're going through somebody's songwriting diary, and why, any of us who write songs, you got an idea, you got a hook, you got a verse you really like, you got a chorus you really like, you got a pre-chorus, but you can't flesh out the rest of the song. You don't just crap out some crap and then go drop that track. I mean, if you do, we've all been there. But this is his job. He's very wealthy. He has all the resources. He has all the time. I think what was missing was somebody to come in and help him understand, like, how to make this album more cohesive. That is a skill. If you're going to be an artist, you got to be able to edit yourself. And I don't think, he probably doesn't feel the need to. But again, I don't know what was going on here with the production team, and I don't know how they got to this. But Swag 1 and Swag 2 could have been consolidated into one stronger album with all the bonus tracks, and then all the skits and the Drewski things. Like, if y'all are into that could have been like, I don't know, secret tracks or at the end of the bonus tracks, like things y'all find entertaining. I already talked about that for the Swag 1 review. Those did nothing for me except honestly make the album less listenable to. So overall, Swag 2 is not a far divergence from Swag 1. You can see how they're connected. Is it overall cohesive? Is the whole Swag double album? It's not one of those epic double albums where you're like, man, this needed to be a double album. This is great. It's not that. It's not that. But there are some good highlights and there's some lowlights. So definitely check it out for some of those production, those highlights that we mentioned. Give it a listen if you're just a Justin Bieber fan or you want to see what the rest of us are talking about when we talk about what we heard from Swag 1 to Swag 2. Will I jump back to it? Probably not. Will I reference back to it if I'm ever in a mixing or in a production stage where I need to know what the tippy top of the pyramid sounds like? Yeah, probably. But I don't think any of these will make it onto a playlist for me. And in that way, it is weaker than Swag 1. Thematically, overall, both these albums just kind of left me tired. It's just a lot of music. It's a lot of music, and it meanders. And thematically, it's not always that cohesive and connected. There are things worth listening to, but overall, it's not a have to listen. Because I'm mostly neutral on it, and I don't have like a ton of bad things to say other than that it needed to be edited and there was some extra like fluff in there that didn't need to be there. But there are some cool moments and some cool production values. I just feel very neutral. If someone were to ask me, should I check the album out? I would tell them why I think you should, but then I would also asterisk it with what you could realistically expect. And so for that, I'm going to give it like a 2.5 or 3 out of 5 overall for both the albums combined as one, because now that I know it's meant to be released as a whole kind of production in and of itself and not two separate albums, I'm going to lump the two of them together and call it a 2.5 or 3 out of 5. That's our album score IQ for this album. Let me know in the comments anything you think about any of the reviews we have, anything you think about the tracks, if y'all have heard any of the tracks or noticed any of the things I did. Let's chat about it. If you guys even mildly like this, just go ahead and subscribe. I mean, it doesn't cost you anything, and if you're anything like me, my YouTube feeds gets real boring after a while, so at least I'm a different person to listen to than the other people you're listening to. I mean, it's just what you're doing when you're washing dishes or driving to work anyways, right? So thanks y'all for listening, and we'll catch you on the next one.